Welcome in, everybody. I am Chris Landry, and this is the Landry Football Podcast for Wednesday, October 13th. Actually, you'll be hearing this probably Friday morning as the show will drop. We always do the show live in case you are wondering and want to come involved, and we encourage you to do so. We do this live on Twitter Live, on YouTube Live, Landry Football on both of those, as well as Twitch TV, Chris Landry Football. Very easy to find us, very easy to check us out. And we hope that you join us as we do this show live so you can join us in the chat room, ask your questions, participate in the show, which is what we want you to do. If you are listening to this show as a podcast, you already probably know how to do this, but we encourage everyone to sign up for the Landry Football Podcast channel. As that's the best way to get the show dropped to you each and every time we have a podcast that is dropped. So we want to make sure that you've got that covered. Also, the LandryFootball.com website is kind of the staple. It's the hub center of what we do. It's the housing center of everything we do. It allows us to disseminate the information from there. So whether it be video broadcast, video cast, whether it's podcasts, whether it's radio interviews, and certainly all the film room breakdowns, of which we take you inside the film room, break down for you, put it in readable form to where you can find out why things happen in the game. Not what happened. You already know what happened, right? But why things happen. That's what we do for you at LandryFootball.com. Take advantage of the football season sale today. It's the best deal going in all of football, quite frankly. It's less than a magazine subscription. You can get access to your own coaching and scouting department. Cover the NFL, cover the college game. We got it all for you. On today's show, as we like to do on this podcast, kind of take an overview, a look at we'll talk about the games and we'll answer anything that you want on any level of football here. But we want to focus on a few things. As I like to say, bringing it from a coaching and a scouting perspective, with the news of John Gruden this week and what all disseminated from that story, as well as Urban Meyer just yet a week ago, as well as other things that go on in today's world. And it applies to players, certainly applies to coaches. It's a different world. It's a different coaching world. It's a different society. Everyone, I'm sure, can agree. We're going to get into that. We're going to talk about that and talk about the Gruden situation. And we'll get into any thoughts that you may have in general on that or anything in any level of specificity. It doesn't have to be on this topic. It could be on something else. It's your opportunity to participate and make this show like you want. I want to talk a little bit about some coaches that are on the hot seat and the situations and those jobs and potentially what could happen and what's going on behind the scenes. And I'm also going to talk about kind of scoping out candidates for a head coaching position when you still have a head coach. It's something that can be considered very sensitive, but it's something that is necessary in today's world to figure out how to go about finding your next guy. You hear this often. You need to have your guy before you fire him. Well, how do you do that if you don't do your homework? Well, we'll get into that. Those are some really good thoughts. And I will take you into some of the processes that I get involved in evaluating coaches, which I think are really essential in the evaluation process. But I want to start with just the overall dealing with a different era in college football in football in general. In that the old way thoughts about society are really not something you can share today. I am not going to sit on a pulpit, and I know I often sometimes preach football and lecture football and sometimes criticize for it. And I apologize. I get into it. That's the coach in me. When you lecture and teach, and it's a lot of what my role is, and maybe not appropriate in every case, but that's kind of what I am and at heart and what I do. But I'm certainly not going to preach what's in people's heart, what they should believe, what they should not believe. Um, I think in general, as a society, we've gotten uglier and uglier. I don't know the exact reasons. I think we can look at the fact that everybody has always had opinions and thoughts and biases and views on social, economical, racial, gender, sexual orientation. People have always had opinions on them. But we didn't hear everybody's opinion back in the day. Everyone's aware of that. It's just kind of like the menial football discussions that we have. Not everybody had a forum to talk about it. Think about it. Talk radio, that didn't exist at one point. Heck, you had very little TV. You had games on the radio, you had reporting of the news of the day, and that's what you got, and that's it. You'd have writing, but the writing was more about four score and, Saturday, team A beat team B, and it wasn't really opinionated. It was, just the facts, ma'am. Just the facts. We've evolved, obviously, on a different world. We've obviously gone into a view of where everybody feels their opinion is important. I don't feel mine is important on most topics. I do feel that there's some level of credibility that I've established in football over years, but I'm probably far less qualified than most anybody that's listening to this about how you should feel, how you should believe. And that's not what this is about. But whatever it is that you think and whatever it is that you believe, here's where I'm going with this conversation is you better keep it to yourself because there are no secrets. Anything you say and do is subject to be taped, videoed, recorded in the digital cloud, and it's going to live with you forever. The old way thoughts about what you had is not something you can share. If at any way it's controversial, because it's going to cost you not just your job, but your career. The John Gruden issue is the ultimate example. On the heels of the Urban Meyer situation, you by now know that the John Gruden situation was not an investigation of John Gruden. Investigation of the Washington football team. There are many, many emails, which I wonder how many of them were inappropriate by Washington personnel. We know that emails between Bruce Allen, their team president, and John Gruden were highly inappropriate. Bruce Allen doesn't work in football, so he would have been fired if he was still working anywhere, in any capacity. John Gruden was working. He is no longer working in football, and don't see a path to him ever returning at any level based upon that. But here's where I'm going with it. If you say something and it gets into the hands of somebody that wants to let it out, you think you're talking amongst friends, and you are, but you don't know who's going to uncover that for whatever reason. At this point, nowhere did Bruce Allen or John Gruden ever think, you know what, we better not say this on email because somebody might investigate us for another reason and then we're going to get caught. It's never the thought, it's never the idea, but there we are. So, what's the point I'm trying to make on this is, well, John Gruden and Bruce Allen, their remarks speak for themselves. If you have that type of belief, it goes to show maybe some of the biases, and yet the ability to suppress it when you want and then unleash it when you want goes to prove the point, which a lot of people say, that there's a lot of maybe not outward biases that exist, but inward ones that are still there and still reflect how people think. And there's certainly evidence of that. There's a I'm so big it's not going to happen to me type theory. I'm important. I can do this and get away with it. That happens to someone else. It won't happen to me. You got an Urban Meyer situation, for example. Well, it's you make dumb decisions. You make a dumb decision, it's there for life. It will be caught. Now, I will say, having been around people for a long time, there's a lot of people who have used language, have expressed viewpoints, have acted inappropriately in ways long, long time ago that were every bit the equal of what you heard with John Gruden. It does not make it okay for John Gruden to do it. On the contrary, what it shows is that there are a lot of people that believe that have said that, but it is not of record. At least it hasn't come to light yet. And it is a lesson to be learned that you must be careful how you deal with that. People may say, well, it's their opinion. You got a free right. It's a free country. Yeah, you have a free right to think what you want. And if you are thinking a certain way, yeah, that's on you. But if you're going to lead a team and some of the members of that team or that organization or that company or whatever the case may be are from that particular gender, race, um, sexual persuasion, they're not going to see you the same way. They're not going to respect you. They're going to see you a lot differently than you're perceived to be. I mentioned on the NFL show that John Gruden is someone that, when I heard this came out, the only thing that was surprising was that it was caught on email. I've heard John Gruden say many of things along the lines of what he said and far worse. And by the way, my understanding is some of that is on record as well and contributed to the Buccaneers taking him out of the Ring of Honor, which they didn't need another reason, because this was enough. What was reported was enough. But on top of that, there's a pattern of this, for example. So for those that say, well, and everything is, private, and again, it's not so much that he did. So is it the problem that he believes it? He believes what he said, or is it a problem that he said those things? I don't know. That's a heavy discussion. But a lot of people did not have a view that John Gruden thought and believed those things because there was no evidence that suggested he did. In fact, there was evidence that he was quite the opposite. Well, the reality is, when it comes out, it makes you look like a phony. One of the problems that Hugh Freeze had was not so much, or not just that, he got caught calling prostitutes, which is certainly unsavory and immoral, and certainly a lack of fidelity can be looked at in a marriage, I guess differently by different people. But what made it over the top was the fact that he was a Bible thumping preacher, holier than thou, Jimmy Swagger type. His nickname in coaching was Coach Swag. And it wasn't for the swag that you get, it was short for Jimmy Swaggart, who, if you don't know, was an infamous preacher in Louisiana, in South Louisiana, where I'm from, that was caught doing the same thing. You know, you're going to sin, you're going to go to hell, and all of you people. And he was dealing with the hookers and got caught, and, and it was just, that's what Hugh Freeze did. People cheat on their wives, people do things that they shouldn't do, and you can forgive them for it. Yeah, you can. Some people are not as easy to forgive when you become or seen as a hypocrite. So you're always on tape. Your comments are always documented. You cannot get away from things that you say, that you live, that you do, if they're recorded. Yet there's still, even though we see this, look at all the details that have yet to be uncovered as of yet. I don't know. Maybe the key word is yet, uncovered from the Washington football team's emails. Will we find out? Because there was a lot of things that was supposedly in there, but it is ironic that to this point, the owner, who was said to be involved highly, I think that it's one of those things you have to look at and say, well, you have to look and say, if you participate in something, you're involved in something, and if it's uncovered, you're going to look bad on it. And so I think you have to, look at to see what type of person you want to be. But we have so many people today that are phonies in coaching, and a lot of them are, and a lot of them are not what they say they are. And a lot of people, and it's not my job to be the tell the stories that I uncover as a part of what I do, and then just come out from in a media setting and tell things that are inappropriate. That's not what I do. That's not what I want to do. But the reality is, there's a lot of this that goes on. So the owner, Dan Snyder, has been able to suppress a lot of the information to this point. Will that be uncovered? Will that be leaked? Because at this point, it was clear that somebody leaked these emails from the league office, which uncovered it in their investigation, leaked it to the press because there was negative material by John Gruden on people in the league, including the commissioner. So we'll get you, we'll bleep you, and we will leak it. Yet, the owners seem to protect their own. Does not justify what John Gruden did. But I just want to wonder, and I just want to know, when are some of the other stuff going to be uncovered? What happens today often is I got asked by someone in another show about Art Browse and whether he's going to get another job yet, and recovering from a job failure or a personal failure. We talked about Hugh Freeze, Art Browse, different situations, but yet similar problems. Urban Meyer has survived so far in Jacksonville. Will he survive? Will he get another job? Does he want another job? All those things are questions you can ask. Don't know that we have the answers to. But when you today are in a leadership position, particularly in college, but even in the NFL, and you have to lead the very people which you are slandering in some form, you can't lead. It's over. It's done. You have no credibility. You have no respect level. And some of it is so bad that you can never earn the respect back. It is one thing to have one comment at one time where you slip up, you had too much to drink, or you were trying to make an awkward joke and it didn't come out right. We've all had issues. But when there's a pattern of years and years and years, it makes you wonder. So as we look at, and I remember being in a compliance meeting with the Southeastern Conference when I was coaching at LSU. And I remember somebody saying, one of our assistants saying, yeah, you're talking about we can't do this and can't do that, and this is against the rules, but I'm going to tell you, they're doing it at the other place. And they said, well, they're doing it at the other place and they get caught, they're going to get punished. Yeah, well, if we don't do it and keep up with their cheating, we're going to get fired because we're not winning enough. And the comment was, you may get fired, but you'll get another job. You get caught cheating, in this case, cheating in recruiting, for example, then you may not work. You may have a show cause. There's a lot to be said for that you may be a coach and get fired for underperforming in a certain situation. But you may get another opportunity somewhere else and do a good job or not, but you may get that other opportunity. We are seeing guys get opportunities even if they have off the field issues. We talked about Hugh Freeze. Will Hugh Freeze get a bigger job, a better job? Will Art Briles ever coach again on a level like this? Don't know. Time could maybe, heal some of that. Time may cloud some of that. Time may allow some further thought. But the reality is the desire to win, the pressure to win is so great that sometimes you will take a risk on certain folks. So I always look and say, and people have always asked me, well, what about this guy? What about that guy? Well, what's the level of a problem? Art Briles is different from Hugh Freeze. It's different from, a Lane Kiffin who's been a little immature. So a lot of times you don't hire someone not because of, I get this. Well, it's not because he never was arrested. Not that bad. There's a lack of respect now. But he recruited well. Can he recruit as well now with that in his background as opposed to what he did before? Probably not. Probably going to hinder his situation. You have to factor all of that in. Which leads me into the next part of where I want to go, and that is, how do you scope out candidates when you've got a coach currently? I think it's a fair question. It's a good question because I've been asked a lot, and we're going to have some coaching openings. And I invite you to send in your questions about what programs do you think do you have a program that you follow that you would like to see a coaching change? What's some of your thoughts? What's your views as a fan? I encourage you with that. How do you scope out candidates? You got a coach. Well, it's better to go ahead and fire the coach in the season, and you can go and do your search, and then look. Here's the bottom line when you have to make a coaching decision. Yes, you need to replace a coach. But what's important is not that you replace a coach. What's important is that you replace him with somebody that is better, that can do the things that this guy cannot. The toughest thing is when you have a coach that needs to be replaced. You replace him with somebody that doesn't work out, and you dig yourself a further hole. And then always get this about, well, they should have let coach number one stay because it was not as bad as this. No, doesn't mean they should not have moved on from coach number one, but the next guy better be better. Or it's now you got two regimes that it's bad. I get it. The problem at Tennessee wasn't that they moved on from Philip Fulmer. In fact, may have moved on from him too late. The problem was there was a series of mishires. Now, in the case of Lane Kiffin, who was hired after Philip, he was only there 1 year. And the immature Lane Kiffin may not have, with all the problems and all the recruiting issues he was given, who knows? It could have been bad with him had he stayed there 3 or 4 years long term. But we don't know. And then it goes into Derek Dooley. And it just gets worse. And then so now the job becomes less appealing and less appealing and less appealing because you're thinking there's a problem there. Well, there is a problem there. There is a problem there because you've had bad hires. And bad hires can lead to a bad look for the overall administration. It's a bad look in the coaching community that, well, man, why are all those guys getting fired? So it is really important, and I'll get to your questions in the chat room. Join us there. If you've got a coach, what I recommend, if you're LSU, for example, and you're going to make a change, USC's made a change and they're in a search. So they're a little bit more, well, they've made that move. But to be honest with you, if you think about it and understand it, there is nothing different about either one of the searches. Now, the one difference is, let me back off that comment. Most things are the same between both searches. One's not a search yet. One is. Technically, USC, or morally, the proper way to do it, can go out and interview folks that are not under contract. So that would be the time to do that if you're USC. If they're not tied to it, interview them now because there's an opening. Not appropriate to do that if you're LSU because they still have a coach. But the process of evaluating coaches is something, and I do a lot of evaluating work for administrators. And the way I do it, just so you know, is I have like scouting reports on players, detailed reports. There's detailed analysis on coaches, all around the country, notes, scouting reports that I can provide in today's grand digital world that we live in. They can look up anybody and obviously see the scouting report and see if it's a fit for you. Now, certainly, as that's what I provide in terms of a service. Now, I often participate, if asked, about certain coaches that may indicate a level of interest. Yeah, at times I do. In some cases, more than others. In the end, it's about the fit and who they like and who they want to hire and what they think and who else they're talking to and who they believe in and who they listen to. You can tell people, I don't believe in this guy. I wouldn't do this. They still may do it because somebody else may be telling them something different. But the process of evaluating and scoping out the list, working through agents who might or might not be interested, you absolutely know who would be interested in this job. It doesn't mean slam dunk, this guy would take the job. But you know what? Jimmy Sexton, how about Coach so and so? Look, I think he would be definitely interested in talking. He would not. He would consider it. I'm not sure. I'll find out. That's how that goes. But the evaluation process, who would you want to consider? Make that long list. Always make a long list. And then before you make the short list. And I think that's really important. It's an exercise I always go through. And I always go through critical factors. You hear me talk about that with players, I do it with coaches. Make a list of critical factors that are most important on your list of what's the most important criteria. Making sure this is number one, number two, number three, number 10, whatever. And put a numerical asphyxiated grade to that helps you give an idea how guys rank on that. Okay. That's really important. And then obviously the other part is a gut feel for things, and you got to go with that. It is almost a new world age where people will look at coaches and say, I like this guy. I like that guy. Do you really know them? You know what the record is, but you really don't know. And there's a lot that you don't know. And I've seen guys that are much better coaches and much better fits, and the record's not nearly as good. And then I see guys that have really good records I don't think is nearly as good as coaches, and it's not as sustainable going from this program to that program. It's about understanding what it takes to win at certain places, what you're looking for, what's the type of the fit to me is a little bit of a, well, that guy can't do everything everywhere. Some guys don't fall into the fit category. If you've got somebody that's a fit, it's usually somebody that has some limitations. Slam dunks can pretty much do anything anywhere. You put a Nick Saban anywhere, and he would get the most out of what the resources allow them to. But he would never go anywhere unless he had the resources to do it the way he wanted. So therefore, it's like anything else. There's certain owners that Bill Parcells would never work for, and that's why he would never go to Tampa with Hugh Culverhouse, because he didn't think he could win there because of the owner. If he had gone there would have been limitations, and he would have left in frustration. So he wouldn't have been successful. So therefore, I'm not going to go there where I'm not going to have a chance to have success. And that's the way you have to look at it as coaches. So I think scoping out the candidates, doing your homework, evaluating candidates, putting your profiles together is what you need to be doing now. It doesn't mean you need to do a deal. Doing a deal and getting guys done could be done very quickly. But knowing who you want should take time. You should challenge yourself and put yourself through numerous tests of whether that a guy is a fit here, there, and what's the best fit. Maybe multiple fits. Which one's the best? There may be no one that's the perfect fit. What is the best case scenario? What is the worst case scenario? Do you want the highest ceiling of a coach or the highest floor of a coach? What's the worst he'll do? What's the best he'll do? Like evaluating a player. I think that's really, really important. Preparing for the head coach, do's and don'ts. You don't actively talk about it to anybody. You don't, um, a lot of the talk is done without, even when you're going to have a coaching opening, is what type, for example, you'll work through agents, and, they look, you've got very few agents that handle the coaches, all the coaches. What you can do is find out long before hey, would this guy be interested in this type of job, or what's kind of the profile of what he would like? And you can really get somewhere with that. And when you do that, you have a pretty good feel, and then you can start to hone in on it. So once we get towards the time that you part ways with your coach, you can say, well, the search is going to begin. You don't need to go into details. You can kind of buy yourself time by saying, well, we're going to start. But you really have already started the process, even though you haven't started the process, if that makes any sense. So who's in trouble? Let me get to that in a second. Let's go to the mailbag. Rock Westfall has opposite problem. Paul Chris was extended, and I'm very glad. But when does Jim Leonard get the itch to go? Um, don't know when Jim's going to get the. I think it would behoove him to take a job. That is a very good one. What have they told him? What have they? Don't think they promised him anything. I don't think Paul's one of those guys that is. Look, here's the thing about staying at Wisconsin, because a lot of people think that Jim would be a good fit at Wisconsin, and he probably would. Here would be my advice to Jim. Look, Paul is young enough; he's going to be there. If there's success, Paul's going to stay. God willing, and the health is fine. Unless there's any indication that Paul might like to retire early or something, if you have success, he's going to stay. If you don't have success, even though you're doing a good job on defense, it just normally doesn't work that if it gets so bad and it regresses, even though the defense looks good, the chances of promoting from within, it could happen at a place like Wisconsin, but I'm not sure. So if you're Jim, would you want the Cincinnati job if Luke Fickell left, where you can win, you have as good or better resource as anybody? Would you want that? Would you want a job that obviously you're not going to take a job unless you can win? But if you go and prove you're a head coach, you eliminate any concerns that anybody might have. And boy, he's a bright young coach. He looks so young, but he's really good running that defense. But he's never been a head coach. At some point, being a head coach will certainly eliminate that obstacle that face him in his future. So I would say pick that right opportunity. And I don't know which one that is. I don't know where he'd want to go. And we can speculate all we want, but he's not going to get as good of a job from defensive coordinator at Wisconsin as he would if he did a good job as a head coach at such and such a school. Now, here's the other side of that. You take a bad job, you take a job where you're not successful, then all of a sudden, well, it was a good defensive coordinator, but he wasn't successful as a head coach. And a lot of these executives in college miss seeing some of the issues and problems. Rock Wessler, did Jeff Brom screw himself doing the honorable thing and staying? Now he is catching heat. Purdue has, well, I mean, he could have gone back home to Louisville. I mean, is that a better job? I don't know. He had that opportunity. There was some interest in Tennessee when they hired Jeremy Pruitt. With that mess over there, I mean, he might be in worse shape. He might have gotten the Jeremy Pruitt treatment. I don't know. I don't know. Making the money he didn't exactly make a mistake. He could have gone somewhere else and he could have gotten equal money. He got all the money at Purdue. So did he make a mistake? He thought he could do something there. I mean, I don't know that the Tennessee situation, Tennessee's a better job than Purdue. I'm not saying that. But you want the Tennessee job when it's in a little better shape than it is now, or it was, and still is. So that job wasn't as good. Louisville, I don't know if that's the ideal situation. Going back home, he know that situation as good as anybody. So, is it a mistake? It's not like he said, you know what, I'm making $2 million a year. They're offering me 4, but I'm going to wait till I go somewhere and I can get 7. No, he got the money at Purdue. He'll be fine. I don't know that he does a better job than might have done a better job than Jeremy Pruitt, but would he have survived there? I don't know. And would he be better off at Louisville? You don't leave Purdue to go to Louisville unless you want to be at Louisville, because that, to me, you can get the elite job from Purdue probably better than you can with Louisville, or just as good. So Louisville is his home. That's his school. If he chose not to go there, there's probably a pretty good reason why. Rock also asks, does the football community have a more realistic view of Kiffin's weaknesses? I think the football community sees Lane as a very bright offensive mind, and I certainly am one of them. What I say about Lane is he's not the only one. There are a lot that fit into this category. As a head coach, while I think Lane has matured and grown, I think there are areas of a head coach that a lot of people, they tend to focus on their side of the ball, and the success of that side of the football will define them. Vis-a-vis, the defense sucks at Ole Miss. Not Lane Kiffin's fault. Really? Last I checked, he's the head coach. He's responsible for everything. Yeah, but he's the offensive guy. He's the play caller. He did this. Okay, well, Jeff Lebby's the play caller. Even if you're the play caller, you're responsible for it. You're responsible for all of it. When you're the head coach, you're the head coach. You may be the offensive guru, the defensive guru. You better make both sides work. That's your job. And I think Lane still sees of himself as the head coach, but the offensive guru. And I want to win. I want to score a bunch of points because it makes me look good. Look at me. And when I will take shots, I will take shots at my defense. They're holding me back. You're holding them back. You're not doing a good enough job playing complementary ball. You're not supporting that side of the ball enough, and you're not getting it done. They're offensive coaches that are good offensive coaches that understand the importance of defense. Lane, I don't think, has matured with that. And I think most people see it that way. Most fans will say, well, yeah, Lane will be great at a bigger school than Ole Miss. But gonna have that offense, that he just hired a defense coordinator to let that go. It doesn't work that way. The offensive guy is going to want to be defined by the offense, and the defensive guy is going to get screwed. He's going to get the short end of the stick. He ain't going to have much there. You were asking about Art Browse earlier when at Baylor. Be that defensive coordinator to be if you were doing a good job defensively, you were holding opponents to 40 points a game because they were running lightning speed, and that's exactly what Lane Kiffin, Jeff Lebby's offense does. It takes your defense and basically, realistically takes them out of playing good defense. So they will never be like a really good defense unless the whole philosophy on offense changes, the tempo, the style. They're just either going to be awful defense or better than awful or maybe average. Look, Hugh Freeze, when he was at Ole Miss, had really good offenses, but he had some defenses that could step up and make plays and had some defensive players. So I get it. That crashed and burned there. But, we're saying, no, Hugh Freeze beat Nick Saban twice. What Jimbo Fisher's been celebrated for doing is he's the first former Saban assistant to win. Hugh Freeze did that twice. Now, he was flawed in some other areas. He got into trouble. I'm not selling Hugh Freeze as the answer for somebody, but the point is, I think people in football see a lot of things that are a lot different than others. What about the jerk AD factor? Steve Peterson ruined 2 programs. Solich lacked Prop 13 players, and Onstad was recruiting good for Pitt. Things never got better. Well, I think that Steve Peterson was a problem. There's no doubt. I'm going to come in and I'm going to change Nebraska. And now, Steve, here's the thing about it. You can't get more Nebraska than Steve Peterson now. I mean, he grew up there. I mean, he lived that he was bottle fed on Nebraska football. But his background in football, he thought, was the smartest guy in the room theory, and we're going to do things differently. But there again, thought Frank Solich was a good coach. They thought they could do better. They thought they were slipping from being elite, and maybe they were. 9 games looks great now. Back then, that was slipping from where they were. Well, Frank can't do it as good as Tom did. That's probably true. Probably would have had consistency, though. And if you look back in retrospect, winning 9 games a year would have looked good at Nebraska for years and years because it's been a lot better than what has happened. But that's not what they were looking for. That wasn't good enough. They wanted more, and they took a chance on more and got less. Tried to change the idea and the culture. And a lot of, though, what was said at that time was the game has changed. It's different. You got to adjust to the styles. We're Nebraska. We can recruit the best players. We can do the best things. And you're running this archaic offense that it doesn't work anymore. So we're going to do it differently. Well, you could do that and it can work, but you better hire right. And they didn't. It's a problem. I thought Wannstedt did okay. I don't know. I don't think Dave was the answer at Pitt, but I can't tell you that there is the real answer. Look, I think you can make good hires. I think you can recruit pretty well there. Look, I'm going to tell you, nobody's paying attention, and maybe nobody's heard it on my ACC show because it doesn't get a lot of attention. Pitt right now has got one of the best-looking offenses in the country. The quarterback's outstanding, and look, I'm not selling them as a return to power. No, and I'm not going to sit there and say that Pat's going to be the long-range answer, and maybe they've kind of appealed. I don't know that they get somebody better. I think Pat, just knowing both, I think Pat's a better coach than Wannstedt, but Wannstedt recruited fairly well. Not great, but he did some good things. I don't know. That's not an easy fix, not an easy answer at Pitt. But I do think you can find that guy that's a good recruiter that wants to make that program unique in his own. I think it's a program that's sustainable to be a really solid program. And they don't, for all their success they've had in the past, they don't expect you to win championships. They expect you to be competitive. Dave was too up and down. Dave had the big win over West Virginia when West Virginia was headed towards the national championship game against Ohio State, lost it, and Les Miles and LSU got in and won the national championship. So he had some big wins. Look, I don't know that Dave was the long-range answer, but it's a fair point. He might have done better than some of the others had. Kevin says, I saw some good chemistry with AB and Brady on Sunday, Anthony Brown and Brady on Sunday versus the Dolphins. Going forward, do you think defenses will have to rethink of how to defend the Bucs receiving core? The chemistry has been there, is there. And knock on wood, Antonio Brown has been on his version of best behavior, which is good. They've got a lot of weapons. Gronk, Evans, Godwin, they got a lot of guys. Yeah, because you have to defend the vertical route. You have to defend the deep crossers. You have to defend out of the slot. And you got to defend down the seam. What he does is create another weapon. I mean, I think he has good chemistry with Gronk. I think he has it with all those receivers that they have. Evans, I think he's got it with all of them. That's Brady. He works that and develops chemistry. Good luck defending all their weapons. And if they can get Fournette to stay consistent, run the football, they should get better and better. What are the coaching openings this year? We know USC's got an opening, LSU soon to come out. Definitively, look, I can't say definitively. I would say this, and I'm not throwing out quote unquote inside information. I'm talking head coaches now. I think they need to make some decisions at Miami. The financial commitment to buy out Manny Diaz is one they're going to have to bite the bullet on. Just, they have what they have with him, and it's not going to be any different. Oh, there may be 1 year a little better. It's still a good program. It can be a good program. It's not consistent. It's not well organized. But they've had a hard time finding that right guy. I would have thought Al Golden would have done a better job there. Guy did a really good job at Temple. But, didn't work. They moved on. Look, I think that they talk about it. The facilities are good and the commitment's there. It hasn't always been there recently. It's always been, well, we did it this way and we had success. We could do it. So they are behind, but they're still in a position to gain a lot of talent in their recruiting base and or in a division, in a conference that is very movable upwardly. Just you need a good football coach. Not anybody can recruit, but you need. Look, here's the thing: go get an offensive guy, go get a great defense, go get it. Stop. Get the best leader. Get a guy that is a good X's and O guy that has a good reputation that could coach the coaches and teach the coaches, direct the coaches, hire coaches, can put together a good staff. Replace the staff. You want your guys to do a good job and move on. That's how you know you're doing a good job, but being able to replace and develop and to have guys in the pipeline that can develop in the program. You need to have the multitude of analysts that you can develop guys and have coordinators in waiting, position coaches in waiting. You want to have that. Hire somebody that can do that and lead and give them all the resources to do that. It will work. It will work anywhere. It sure as hell will work there. But they haven't done those things. They hire people that are not experienced leaders. They try to, catch lightning in a bottle with this scheme or this coordinator. That's not sustainable. Never is, never will be. So we know LSU, we know USC. I think we need to watch Miami. I think that's a probability. I think Syracuse has to make a decision. Again, what do they want to put in it? Dino is not recruited very well. It's tough to recruit to. I get it. But I think at Syracuse, you have to look at Rutgers is doing a good job. Can Syracuse find their version of Jeff Hafley? You can do at Syracuse what he's done at Boston College. And I'm not saying that Jeff Hafley is on the verge of taking BC into prominence that they haven't seen since Doug Flutie or anything like that. Okay? But I do, I think you can do better at Syracuse than Dino Babers. Who you're willing to go get? There again, it's not going to get better with Dino. Certainly you had a year like a few years ago, but that was a lot of what he inherited, and you don't have nearly the type of talent, and you're not recruiting that to that level. And so in the future, you're going to see less and less of you may see a spike here or there with a couple more wins, but that'll be interesting. I mentioned before, would Doug Marrone go back there? Would they want him to go back there if he had Alabama? I don't know. I mean, that'll be interesting to see. We need to keep an eye out on how Virginia Tech finishes. For the Virginia Tech administration has been very patient, always is historically. I don't think they're going to make a move. But Justin has really, how can I say, not endeared himself with the administration so that if he doesn't win, or if they collapse down the stretch, that could be one we need to keep an eye out on. But yet, they got Pitt this week in what I think is a big game, and I think that's the team to beat in the Coastal, whoever wins this weekend. Not saying they will, but that's kind of how I see it. We are getting close, maybe not this year, but we're getting close to Duke's David Cutcliffe stepping aside. So that could be one. I'm not sure that Texas Tech is ready to pull the plug on Matt Wells yet, but that's one we need to watch. So that's some thoughts of openings in college. NFL, I've got some thoughts there. We need to keep an eye out on Jacksonville. And Las Vegas, depending on how Rich does and where Mark Davis may want to go. I think we need to watch the situation with the Giants, particularly as it relates to the GM, and that could have an effect on the head coach. But probably it's a GM move that would keep the head coach, and then probably we're looking at something next year. Chicago, things are well. I think right now the odds would be that Matt Nagy would stay, keep his job, but that bears watching. So we'll see where that goes. So anyway, those are some of the thoughts. Hey, I appreciate yours. Let's see. Rock says, who was the biggest accidental championship? Chiswick or Orgeron? Coach O got a second chance. Why didn't Gene? Well, here's the thing. There again, what happened with Gene? There were a complete dysfunction administratively and in the football operations at Auburn. He got fired not because it collapsed and they lost all those games after Cam Newton. Is all the things that happened that destroyed the program behind the scenes that led to the losses. So it's a chicken egg thing, right? That's why he got fired. It wasn't like, oh man, they lost a couple of players, but they're doing things. Remember we talked about last week with the with the A&M or somebody. Look, don't panic at certain places. If they're doing things right behind the scenes, then you just keep sawing wood, keep going. If you got dysfunction behind the scenes, it's bad. I call it the ice cream or the carton of milk theory. If you make a mistake and put ice cream in the refrigerator, it's an easy fix. Take it and put it in the freezer, and it'll be fine. If you got spoiled milk and you take it out and it smells rancid and it tastes rancid, putting it back ain't going to make it taste any better tomorrow. So you got to determine what you got. Do you have spoiled milk or do you got ice cream in your refrigerator? I know that's a silly analogy. That's how I look at it. So if you've got dysfunctional problems, then you've got to move on from that because that's going to fester and cause a bigger and bigger problem. If you're doing things correctly and you're on the right path, but you're just going slow or you're not even moving, you can still justify keeping it in the right direction. So what's the difference between Willie Taggart and Mike Norvell? Well, the difference is massive dysfunction under Willie Taggart behind the curtain. With Mike Norvell, you're not seeing that. If you do, then you got to consider that, but you're not seeing that. So I'm not suggesting that you're going to win in the future, but you've got a chance because you're on the right path. You just may never get there quick enough, fast enough, but you're on the right path. If you get off the path and you can't find your way to the path, that's when you got to move on. That's the difference. With Gene, it got off the path. With Ed, there was a legitimate belief, and while there were problems, Ed reminded me a lot of what happened right after Philip Fulmer won his title in Tennessee. You could see some complacency in the coaching staff, laziness, I would even call it. I got it figured out. I've got the answers. We just did what we did, and we're going to be that, and it doesn't work that way. There was no real reason at that point to fire Ed, even though I didn't think it was a good hire to begin with. They did catch lightning in a bottle, and they got a title that I never thought they'd get with Ed. They did. It I knew things were going bad, but there was every justification to let it play out a little bit. And with Gene, look, Gene had another year. I think the thing that saved Ed was the COVID year. And that's the one difference, too, is that they could throw off last year to COVID. It was a disaster, but now you better fix it, and you ain't going to survive next year, which is this year. Gene didn't have that. So I don't know that that's an apt comparison, no question about it. But I do think that there's similarities with Joe Burrow, Cam Newton, big changes. And look, Gus Malzahn was a play caller, and things clicked for Auburn. A lot of similarities. Hey, folks, appreciate you joining us. Join us next week, same time, for another edition of the Landry Football Podcast. Appreciate you, Rock. Appreciate you, Kev Belargo, joining us. Check out all the film room breakdowns on LandryFootball.com. Take advantage of the football season sale. We ask you, sign up for the Landry Football Conference Call. Sign up for, Twitch.tv if you haven't. Please do so. It helps us with the algorithms and deciding what shows we're going to keep doing and which ones we need to part ways with, depending on which ones you like the most, which ones you're interested, which ones you're not interested in. We're going to have to figure that out as we get towards the end of this football season. So it helps us. We do this show. We do this as a podcast, but we do it live so that we can interact with you as we do it live. Then, of course, you can go back and listen to it if you're not catching it live. So we appreciate everybody's involvement. Thank you. God bless you. And we'll be back tomorrow. Yes, we've got SEC football and beyond at 5 p.m. Central Time. I'll be here. I do believe Dan Matthews will be back. But in either way, I will be here. Have a great evening, everybody.